if what I'm talking about today actually happens, warfare, as we've known it for the last 5,000 years, has been altered irreparably.
Those are the words of Professor Darin Gerdes in a May 19 video where he talks about how Ukraine has changed the game when it comes to a modern warfare. And he's not wrong. Ukraine's unique approach is the main reason why Russia has lost almost 1 million of its soldiers and why President Vladimir Putin's invasion has failed. This is how Ukraine is bleeding Russia dry in a war of 1,000 cuts. But who is Darin Gerdes and why does his opinion matter? For several years, Geres has run the Professor Gerdes Explains YouTube channel, where he covers a host of topics ranging from the political differences in the United States to Putin's strategic failings in the Ukraine war. He's a graduate of Liberty University, where he received his bachelor's degree in government and psychology. He's also a graduate of Regent University, from which he's received 2 master's degrees, one in public policy and the other in emphasis on entrepreneurship, as well as a doctorate in organizational leadership. Right now, he serves as a tenured professor at Nielsen College of Business, along with running his YouTube channel. Gerdes knows his stuff, and his most recent insights into Ukraine's approach show us how President Volodymyr Zelensky's forces have changed how war is waged. It all starts with Ukraine's failed 2023 counteroffensive against Russia. Much hyped when it was being prepared, that counteroffensive's main goal was to break the Russian front line. Ukraine focused primarily on Donetsk and Zaporizhia. It didn't do well. While Ukraine managed to retake 14 villages with a combined estimated pre-war population of about 5,000, it suffered heavy casualties in the process. Estimates of Ukrainian losses during the counteroffensive vary from 90,000 to 400,000 on the Ukrainian side, while Russian losses during the same period are also subject to varying estimates, with some reports suggesting just 11,000 casualties.
Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive failed against Russian minefields.
That's Geres citing an analysis in Euromaidan Press. That's not wrong, though this is a little bit of an oversimplification. There were several reasons why Ukraine didn't manage to regain the territory it had lost to Russia, as explained by an in-depth Reuters examination of the counteroffensive published in December 2023. Other issues, besides the minefields that Geres mentions, include Ukraine splitting its force across almost the entire front line. Though Donetsk and Zaporizhia were the primary objectives, Ukraine spread itself too thin too quickly by trying to take everything at once rather than focusing solely on those 2 locations. The amount of time between the counteroffensive being announced and its happening also played a massive role. Russia had the time to create layered defenses across the front line, including the minefields Gerdes mentions, along with building anti-tank ditches, new fighting positions, and other obstacles designed to slow down Ukraine's ground-based advance. But it's that ground-based approach that may have been Ukraine's biggest mistake. When Geres talks about rewriting the rules of war, that's precisely what Ukraine didn't do in the summer of 2023. Instead, it followed the same rules of war Russia had used to take so much of its territory in the first place. Advances via land combined with a reliance on manpower to overrun the enemy. Only, Ukraine didn't have the manpower advantage. It certainly didn't after Russia's layered defenses came into play, as wave after wave of Ukraine's soldiers were battered by Russia's artillery and other weapons as they tried to negotiate those defenses. In short, one could say that Ukraine tried to use Putin's own tactics against him. It failed. However, Gerdes explains that failure taught Ukraine the valuable lesson that may soon allow it to rewrite the rules of warfare. Reading from that ex-post published by Euromaidan Press, Gerdes says,
Imagine if drones could get behind enemy lines, cut them off, and then they're kind of stuck.
The idea is simple, as Gerdes explains. Where traditional tanks, armored vehicles, and other ground-based tactics failed in 2023, this horde of drones could be the key to weakening Putin's forces to the point where Ukraine can start taking territory back.
That's why military experts are proposing a revolutionary approach using drones to create layers extending 100 kilometers behind enemy lines.
The professor notes that this will be a technologically difficult feat for Ukraine to accomplish.
But if they can do it, whoa, making movement and resupply impossible. You have layers of drone superiority.
The idea here is to isolate the Russian troops that are embedded in occupied Ukrainian territory, As the 2023 counteroffensive proved, those troops are well protected and know how to defend against the traditional ground assaults Ukraine tried to launch. Of course, they understand those types of attacks. Putin uses them himself to capture Ukrainian territory, and these types of full frontal assaults against defensive positions have been a hallmark of warfare for centuries. But drones didn't exist back then. What Ukraine has the potential to do is inflict a war of 1,000 cuts against Russia by using its drones to both cut off supply lines and slowly but surely whittle away at the Russian defenders. Artillery is great when it's being fired at tanks, armoured vehicles and large collections of Ukrainian troops. The same goes for minefields and other obstacles. They slow people on the ground so much that the troops become sitting ducks for Russia's attacks. Drones are a different prospect. They can fly over minefields and barbed wire without any issues. Artillery can't hit them, at least not purposefully. A drone would have to be flying low, and Russia's artillery would need to get very lucky to stand any chance of scoring a direct hit. With this revolutionary new tactic, Ukraine mitigates all of the issues that caused its 2023 counteroffensive to fail while using drones to surround Russia's defenses. In April, journalist David Axe dug deeper into the concept. Writing for the Trench Art channel on Substack, Axe starts by noting that having enough drones to pull off its revolutionary new tactics isn't a problem. In just over a year, Axe says, Ukraine's domestic drone manufacturers have gone from pumping out about 20,000 drones to 200,000 per month. That number is backed by the Kyiv Post, which even suggests that Ukraine is doing better than that. By February 2025, the country's drone production had topped 2.5 million per year. Axe himself wrote in a March Forbes piece that Ukraine isn't going to stop there. It has a target to build its drone manufacturing capability to the point where it's making 4.5 million drones annually by the end of 2025. So, supply isn't going to be a problem. Immediately, this represents a counter to the more traditional tactics Ukraine used in the 2023 counteroffensive. Back then, Ukraine was held back because it didn't have superior numbers of troops or equipment. With literally millions of drones being produced per year, its new tactic completes a turnaround that sees it exercise a numbers advantage against Russia that Ukraine hasn't had at any other point during the war. Axe then goes on to describe the new Ukrainian strategy in detail, noting that Ukraine is already deploying its flying robots to create what Henry Jackson Society fellow David Kirichenko describes as a massive wall of drones. And the timing is perfect. Axe notes that Russian ground offensives are likely to accelerate as spring turns to summer. Again, that's typical of traditional warfare. Winter slows ground offensives down due to freezing weather, snow, rain, lack of visibility, and many other issues. The summer is the time to fight, at least for Russia. And Ukraine knows it. On May 20, the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, confirmed that Russia is looking to intensify offensive operations over the next few months. The summer attacking period plays a role in that decision, as does Russia's desire to gain leverage it can use in peace negotiations, RUSI says. The process has already started in some areas by the time RUSI published its piece, with Sumy, Kharkiv and Zaporizhia all coming under stronger attacks. Ukraine's goal with its new tactics is to cut those offensives off at the knees, stopping them in their tracks while creating opportunities for Ukraine to counter and potentially retake territory. Ukrainian soldiers are confident their drones will give the invaders hell, Kirichenko says. A new kind of warfare, low cost, high impact, a drone wall. Axe also highlights just why these drones will be so effective. He says that Ukraine will use its hordes of first-person view or FPV drones to conduct its new approach. Those FPV drones are controlled either via fiber optic cables, which make them resistant to jamming, or wireless radios, with an operator at the controls steering the drone based on what they see from the vehicle's real-time video feeds. Each of those drones cost a few $100s to make, says Axe, and can travel for several miles while carrying an explosive warhead. Ukraine is already using FPV drones to great effect, with up to 7,000 of them launched daily, Axe says. And they, along with other types of drones, are now responsible for around 80% of the casualties that Russia experiences daily, according to Congressman Pat Harrigan, who said in an April X post that the emergence of these drones should be a wake-up call to the United States that it needs to start investing in this form of warfare. That's a story for another day. However, Congressman Harrigan's comments show us that the rest of the world is taking notice of what Ukraine is doing. Ukraine can essentially build as many of these FPV drones as it needs to create the layered walls Kirichenko mentions. It has the manufacturing capability, and the idea can't come into practice soon enough. Kirichenko says he spoke to one Ukrainian soldier who told him that drones have become Ukraine's main form of defense. "We're holding the line with drones. There's barely anyone in the trenches," the soldier said. That may serve as a proof of concept. If Ukraine's drones can hold the line against constant waves of Russian infantry and tanks, surely they're strong enough to serve as an attacking force that breaks the sources of those waves from the rear. Kirichenko notes that efforts are underway to extend the typical FPV drone's kill zone from around 9 miles to 25 miles. That's extra range that will make Ukraine's drone walls possible. The goal? Deny Russian forces the ability to move undetected across the front, Kirichenko says. That's another interesting point. So often FPV drones are seen as an offensive force, likely because of their use as kamikaze vehicles that attack Russian equipment. However, Kirichenko is suggesting that Ukraine can use its drone walls to observe Russians' troop movements too. That opens up even more possibilities. Ukraine's new tactic could allow it to observe vulnerabilities across the front line, allowing for the launch of counteroffensives that are far more effective than anything seen in 2023. These observations would also offer information about where Russia intends to attack next, allowing Ukraine to fortify and even use drones to channel Russia's infantry and mechanized units into pre-designated kill zones where they can be blasted with artillery. The potential of this new tactic is staggering. Andrew Perpetua, who's a military analyst working with OSINT, explains that potential. He says that Ukraine could use its drones as signal extenders too, positioning some throughout the layered walls to serve as relays for the more active drones conducting surveillance and attacks. That would increase the range of Ukraine's FPV drones even further, allowing it to create massive kill zones that Russia's soldiers can't penetrate. "You have layers of drone superiority," claims Perpetua. One layer at 62 miles, one layer at 31 miles, one at 25 miles, another at 12 miles, and the closest at 6 miles. Again, there's offensive and defensive potential here. These layers provide multiple barriers for a Russian offensive to break through. Recall Ukraine's 2023 counteroffensive, and you'll remember that Russia's layered defenses were a key reason for its failure. Ukraine would be turning the tables on Russia, only it would use drones rather than the more traditional fields of barbed wire and landmines. Offensively, those drone layers could also be pushed forward, being constantly replenished by Ukraine, as ground forces stationed behind the layers make slow progress toward territory Ukraine wants to retake. Ukraine gets all of this, plus the ability to cut Russian logistics and supplies off at every turn. It's a brilliant strategy, and the best thing about it, as Geres explained,
and then you just repeat the trick, rinse and recycle, wash and do it again.
That ability to repeat comes from the massive drone manufacturing capacity Ukraine has built, and it comes with so many benefits. Citing Euromaidan Press, Gerdes calls this new approach
the only feasible path to breaking Russian defenses without massive Ukrainian casualties, and they want to avoid massive casualties.
The summer 2023 offensive proved that, but even looking at the sheer numbers provided by global firepower, Ukraine is at a distinct manpower advantage. Russia has an active military with 1.32 million personnel compared to Ukraine with 900,000. Russia also has 800,000 more reserves to call upon. Most importantly, Russia's population is nearly 141 million compared to Ukraine's, which sits at 36.6 million. Traditional warfare is never going to result in a victory when those sorts of numbers are at play. So, Ukraine's drone layers take manpower out of the equation altogether. Gerdes points out that some analysts believe Ukraine should launch this new strategy right now, whereas others say it should wait until the timing is right. What all seem to agree on is that, says Gerdes.
If Ukraine launches another counteroffensive, drones must lead the way. I believe that that's what's going to happen, that drones will be leading the way.
They'll also be doing it while Putin stubbornly clings to his more traditional view of what war is supposed to look like. That stubbornness is good for Ukraine. As Bloomberg reported on May 21, Putin believes that his military has the upper hand in the Ukraine war and should be able to take 4 key Ukrainian regions. This is even though Russia's battlefield gains in the Ukraine have halved since the end of 2024. The key point here is that Putin thinks he's winning, so his strategy isn't going to change. Meanwhile, Ukraine is preparing its revolutionary new drone walls that could spell the end of Putin's invasion in a death by 1,000 cuts scenario. The key here is that the drone walls are just one part of a larger drone strategy that Ukraine intends to use. There are already plenty of other innovative uses of drones coming into play. Take the May 19 attack on a Crimean oil rig used as a radar array as an example. That attack saw Ukraine use what it's calling a carrier drone into the Black Sea. That drone, which looks like any other seaborne drone, has plenty of hidden capabilities. The Center for International Maritime Security, or CIMSEC, highlights this, noting that Ukraine's new carriers have a special compartment in which they can store up to 4 FPV aerial drones. Some reports describe additional compartments for depth charges and TNT equivalent payloads to enable kamikaze attacks, though these specific claims have not been independently verified. If accurate, this would represent another layered approach, only in a different way. Russia discovered how dangerous that carrier drone was in the Black Sea. Check out our in-depth video on the new drone and its capabilities to learn more. There's also the recent Crimean bridge strike to consider. Just a couple of days ago, Ukraine used what is believed to be an underwater drone named Marichka to conduct an explosive attack against the bridge, which serves as a vital logistical vein between Crimea and mainland Russia. The explosion only succeeded in temporarily closing the bridge, but it's yet another example of the innovative ways Ukraine is using drones to hurt Russia without risking any of its soldiers. There's a separate video covering that strike in more detail. It's layers within layers, the essence of the death by 1,000 cuts idea. With its new drone walls, Ukraine inflicts casualties against Russia's defensive and offensive forces while giving itself a chance to take more territory. Its exploits in the Black Sea allow it to decimate Russia's aerial defenses and key supply lines, much as the drone walls do on a smaller scale on the ground. The drones operating in the Black Sea also allow Ukraine to minimize the impact Crimea has on the mainland. Putin was using the annexed territory to shuttle troops and equipment into Ukraine, along with launching his missile and bomb attacks. The more damage Ukraine can do to Russia in Crimea, the less Putin can do that. Supply lines are cut, relieving pressure in contested Ukraine, which feeds right back into the drone walls and their ability to hurt Russia's ground forces. And all of this would be done against a backdrop of Russia's failing offensives, says Geres. He points to Russia's semi-recent losses. On May 19, Gerdes notes, day over day, Russian losses amounted to 1,040 day over day.
That seems to be pretty low. 1 tank, 5 armored fighting vehicles, 29 artillery systems, 88 vehicles and fuel tanks. So most of the damage here comes from the drones hitting the vehicles and fuel tanks.
He then switches to his own spreadsheet, noting that these vehicle and fuel tank losses are 1,199.
Just dipped below 1,200, which was in April was 1,210, in March was 1,328. So it's low.
Geres is making the point that Russia's offensives are already faltering. If Ukraine is able to pull off its drone wall, combined with the many other ways it's using drones, it could stall Putin's forces out and create the perfect opportunity for a more effective counteroffensive later in 2025. There's a great irony to this death by 1,000 cuts approach. Back in July 2024, Forces News reported on comments made by former Australian Army Major General Mick Ryan. Speaking about the meat grinder tactics Putin was using in Ukraine, Ryan noted that Ukrainians are having to defend against dozens and dozens and dozens of individual attacks across hundreds of kilometers of the front line every day. Ryan concluded, "That does slowly but surely weigh down a military and a nation. It really is this death by 1,000 cuts." Ukraine's drone walls allow it to turn the tables. Where Putin's death by 1,000 cuts approach saw him rely on the same attritional tactics seen for millennia in warfare, Ukraine's new version achieves the same objective using drones. Will it work? The world will have to wait and see if Ukraine can pull off its drone walls first. Then it will become clear if it's truly able to sustain its revolutionary way of engaging in warfare. And speaking about revolutionary tactics, a few days ago, Ukraine pulled off a massive drone assault on 4 Russian airfields. Subterfuge, military intelligence, and sheer courage were all required as Ukraine made Russia the victim of a strike it never saw coming as part of Operation Spiderweb. Check out our video explaining how Operation Spiderweb crushed Russia's spirit forever. And remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more videos covering Ukraine's brilliant use of drone warfare.